To the theatre. And let's be honest about it, if you go to the West End, without doubt you look forward to it, and almost certainly, unless you've had a gift, been gifted the tickets or whatever, you'd probably shelled out a few quid. I note from today's Daily Mail that you can pay up to £220 a ticket to see Les Misérables. By the way, it is worth every penny. What my review is worth. It is a sensational show, which I'm fortunate to say I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times. Absolutely brilliant. We've worked out the average is about £80, £100 average. So you go with your husband, or you go with your wife, or you go with whoever. That's a couple of £100. You have a meal. It is an expensive night out. You deserve to enjoy it. By the way, you will if you go to Les Misérables. I say again, it is a tremendous show. And this is how this particular part of the production, this is Do You Hear the People Sing, this is what you're supposed to hear. I get it. I get the storyline is all about revolution and poverty and Les Misérables. I understand that. But do you really need that in the theatre as well? Because this is how it sounded last night at the Sondheim Theatre. Sadly, the cast tried to hang around to see if they could get the production going again, but once the safety curtain came down and the evacuation began, well, I'm afraid that's it, lights up and you're out. Why? As you heard on the LBC News Bulletin, this is Noah explaining, who took part in the action, explaining why.
I love theatre. I've done theatre for years. The last thing I want to do is disrupt this, but this is what I have to do to protect it. Because if these oil licences go ahead, we cannot have any theatre, we cannot have any sports, we cannot have anything.
Let's turn to Robert Emery, who's conductor, pianist, record producer, musical director, and joins me now. Your reaction to this particular protest, Mr. Emery. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I'm shocked by it, to be honest with you. I just don't really understand it. The actors on stage, I feel desperately sorry for them, as well as the audience. It's frightening. What people forget is when you're on a stage and you're looking out to the audience, you can't see anything. There's lights blaring in your eyes, and all of a sudden you hear this commotion. And I've experienced this firsthand as a conductor, where my back is to the audience all the time, and you hear a commotion and you think, what on earth is happening? It's terrifying. You don't know if there's something really, really awful happening out in the audience, and if you need to run away or whether you should continue. And it's just something which I'm afraid I just don't accept. I feel desperately sorry for all the people who spent their hard-earned money going to the theatre and it being destroyed for the night.
And when it happened to you, Mr. Emery, what did you ever find out what was causing the consternation behind you?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that spring to mind. One is a poor gentleman had a heart attack in the audience, and his wife sitting next to him was screaming for an ambulance. And the second one is I've had so many times where people have turned up drunk to the theatre, and there's been a fight. People have been singing the songs at the top of their lungs, and the other people around them are telling them to be quiet. They want to hear the professionals on the stage sing. And literally a pub brawl bursts out in the auditorium, and we have to stop the show. And we've stopped the show for an hour beforehand and continued. And I tell you, it's really difficult to get your energy back. It's really difficult to get your focus back when you need to continue.
Yes, I hadn't thought of it, that for the cast and the musicians. That's horrific. Lastly, if people were in the audience last night, Mr. Emery, and they were not sure where they stood on these protests, do you think they'll have won any people over by this time?
No. Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. Simple as that.
Robert Emery, thank you. You're conductor, pianist, record producer and musical director. Well, I'm grateful to Zoe Cohen for coming on the show. She's a spokesperson with Just Stop Oil. So thank you for coming on. What did your colleague... Were you involved in it last night, Ms. Cohen?
Hi, Nick. I wasn't there myself, but of course I completely support Noah and colleagues for taking action. These are desperate young people.
May I ask a question? What did they achieve? What was achieved last night?
Look, I won't take lectures on tactics from someone like yourself who is doing nothing about this complete emergency that we're in, Nick. I won't take lectures on tactics. We've had far too many lectures on tactics.
Okay.
We are in an out-and-out emergency. Right. Scientists are freaking out. Why aren't you getting them on your show?
Because they're not oafish enough to disrupt a performance in front of people who've paid... No, let me speak now, madam. Let me speak.
Don't call me madam.
Miss Cohen, whatever. Let me just speak for a moment. I let you go and abuse me, which is fine. I'm in that position. Do me the courtesy of listening to the reply, if you would. They are not oafish enough to disrupt a performance that people in some instances have paid hundreds of pounds to do, and unless you know better than I, none of whom have any influence over government policy whatsoever. If this was a production where the entire Conservative Party were in attendance after their conference, I wouldn't condone it. I could sort of understand it. These are people who paid a fortune to enjoy a night out. Neither they nor the cast has any influence. Why should they be subjected to that, as you asked me the question? Ms. Cohen?
What you were saying is historically inaccurate. The history of social science tells us that when enough people come together and take action, we make a difference. That's why thousands of young people and hundreds of young people are coming forward to put their bodies on the line, to march on the road from the 29th of October onwards. So I appeal to everyone listening, including everyone who was in the theatre last night and everyone in the theatre industry. Go to juststopoil.org, come to a talk, and come on the road from the 29th of October
I will try
onwards.
again. I will try again. I have to say, I think you're choosing not to answer my question. Much as I would argue probably most of the people who were at Lord's with the protests that took place in the cricket, most of the people who are at Sheffield for the snooker, there may be the odd politician, the odd oil executive, most of whom, they might be as fervently committed to change. They can't do it anyway. So I ask you again, Ms. Cohen, why target them, almost innocent, as it were, bystanders?
It's not about targeting anywhere. It's about making sure that the most important story of our time gets on the front pages and gets these conversations, Nick.
You're not going to answer that question.
I am answering your question. There is no cultural event that is not worth disrupting. The person you just interviewed, the conductor guy, was talking about feeling desperately sorry, frightened, terrifying, destroyed, all these words. For about a theatre production, oh my goodness! What about the 10,000 people swept away in Libya? What about the thousands of...
You choose again to ignore my point, which is, I doubt that anybody who was affected by that tragedy in Libya was there. So let me try one final question. The entire Conservative cabinet have been in Manchester for the last 4 days, roughly 3 to 4 days. People such as the Prime Minister, the Secretary to the Treasury, the Chancellor and the Energy Secretary. Now, while I, again, would not support it, why didn't you protest there and instead go to the Sondheim Theatre in the West End?
Supporters of Just Stop Oil were outside the Tory party conference. They were there, actually, Nick. I don't know if you reported on that.
I was there.
They were there.
Where? They weren't. Well, which bit were they at?
Outside. They were outside because they couldn't get in. They were marching outside.
Well, not where I was.
Look, I think you maybe need to speak to many, many other people. That even the Pope supports radical action. Even the Pope is speaking out in support of people like us taking action.
I don't know that His Holy Father would support disrupting a night out at the theatre. Unless you have a line to him that I don't.
People taking radical action because people in institutions and governments are failing us. They are betraying the young. This government wants to max out North Sea oil and gas, and we want an end to new oil and gas. New oil and gas is a betrayal of the young, and it is genocide. It is climate genocide,
okay.
Nick.
And anyone whether they're trying to enjoy a sporting event, a flower show, a theatre, a cultural event, trying to get to A to B, trying to get to it, they're all just acceptable to be collateral damage in your campaigning, Zoe Cohen.
Look, collateral damage. Let me tell you about collateral damage.
No, I've just told you, actually, and I'm going to leave it. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you. Zoe Cohen is a spokesperson, and I'm grateful for you coming on. Thank you. I genuinely mean that. I don't thank you for you and your colleagues' tactics, but I thank you for your time. You're from Just Stop Oil. It's 8:15. News headlines with Thomas Watts on LBC.